Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
All right, another one. How you doing? All right? Hang on to that thing. Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network. And I'm your sheltered in place once again, host Howard Fletcher. And I'm joined as always by my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug. We are positively honored and thrilled to be here with you once again. If you're new to our show, we'd love to extend a very warm and gracious welcome to you. Thank you for giving us a try. We know there's a ton of media out there, and we just really appreciate that you choose to let us mumble in your ear, let us talk about whatever we want to talk about with you today, rather than spending it with someone else. We appreciate that. We aim to please. Hope we show our appreciation by giving you something that you want to hear and that you'll keep coming back, because that's the plan. Also, if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know how we feel about you. You are truly the reason we are here. We're going to try to keep bringing quality information and entertainment to you. So please keep coming back, and together, let's all have some fun. We have another jam-packed show for you today, as always. Taraji P. Henson, well, she gets spun off. Perry Mason, he gets a second chance. Hillary is what if'd. HBOMax. Yes, that's my thing. HBOMax is the great white we thought it would be. But Netflix, well, they're not resting on their laurels. I'll always bring you news as it breaks, and it looks like we might not have any new movies this year. I won't say I told you so yet, because they haven't given it a call yet, but I will tell you I told you so pretty soon. But first, let's get started with some breaking Screen Actors Guild news. Members of SAG-AFTRA, and that's the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, have ratified a successor deal to the union's master contract. Now, this contract covers work on feature films and primetime television. Now, the Performers Union announced the approval Wednesday evening following 3 weeks of voting and spirited campaigns for and against the pact with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. The 3-year deal is retroactive on July 1st. Now, the pact received 74% approval among those who are voting, so about 3/4 of those who cast a vote. The Performers Union, which reps about 160,000 members, rolled out several videos in recent days with President Gabrielle Gutierrez urging a yes vote on the new deal. Now, her key points of the new deal says that it increases overall folks' salary, what they can expect to be earning as a group, by $318 million over the next 3 years. And something else that's in it that's most important to this podcast, it increases fixed streaming residuals by 26%. So that means if you're on a Netflix production by any chance, and it stays on Netflix and it continues to stream, you get 26% more of the residual earnings, whatever you negotiated would be over the term of this contract. So that's good, because most of your work is going to end up on streaming anyway. And she also says that this is quote-unquote groundbreaking improvements in provisions for performers in nude and simulated sex scenes. That also is very important, because as more of these productions go on streaming and cable that aren't as thoroughly regulated by the FAA, actually almost no regulation, other than maybe a snuff film, then, there are going to be more nude scenes. There's going to be more nude scenes, or the potential of more nude scenes and more simulated sex scenes. And therefore, these actors want some protection so they don't get exploited by directors and producers. Here's a quote. "I am grateful for the many members who got involved and used their voices to help set the priorities up for this contract," Kateris said, following the vote results. "This is a forward-thinking agreement that builds on the challenging realities of the streaming business and positions our union to continue the fight for a safer workplace for all," end quote. Now, high-profile endorsers of the deal included Alex Baldwin, Robert De Niro, Stephen Lang, Rosie O'Donnell. Opponents of the deal include Mark Hamill, Patricia and Rosanna Arquette, Ed Asner, Laura Dern, Elliot Gould, Matthew Modine, and Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Now, opponents had asserted that the new contract will destroy syndication, with the decades-old fixed residual formula seeing a 3-year loss of $70 million and an 8-year loss of $170 million. They have also argued that 1.5% of the 2% pension and health increase will be deducted from the wage increase, and that dropped the provision to require first-class travel for travel under 1,000 miles and puts members at risk for the COVID era. Let me translate all of that. The people that were against this, while the residuals for streaming were increased. Okay, so if you got if you're on House of Cards, you like this contract, all right? But if you have residuals on syndicated work, that's on broadcast, like Seinfeld or Friends or something like that, apparently this contract has a provision that income is going to be reduced. And so some of these people felt as though they were taking a loss, which they probably are. Also, it says that they can put you in coach if you're traveling under 1,000 miles on a plane, and they want to fly first class. Well, you can't please everybody. Now, 3 years ago, SAG-AFTRA members ratified the deal they're currently under. But the problem with that deal, or where it was getting pushback, was that only about 15% of the 144,000 eligible voters at that time voted on it. So that was only about 15% of the actors in the guild. So a lot of people felt as though their voice wasn't heard, and that's why it's important that you vote, folks. I'm bringing that up because you're going to have to vote in November. Please do that. Members of the Performers Union had not voted down a contract within memory. So they didn't, most of the contracts that have been proposed have always been ratified. Had this contract been voted down, SAG-AFTRA negotiators would have returned to the bargaining table with studios to hammer out a different deal. As the money gets bigger and the stakes higher for actors in the new normal of the streaming world, I think you're going to see more of a split in these votes, especially as actors get their own production companies, which I bring up on this podcast all the time. And I'm going to report some stories today about actors starting production companies, because while members of SAG used to vote almost exclusively with the interests of actors in mind, because that's all they did, now some of them are management. Some of them are producer actors or actor producers. It depends how they look on themselves. And so therefore, they're going to have to look at these agreements in a different light. And so you're going to see these things start to evolve. And like I said, it looks like if you're an actor out there who doesn't have a production company and doesn't control his or her or their future, or how they are, or their productions that they're involved in, they may not get as much sympathy from their peers as they might have in the past when their peers were just actors like them. So, something to look at. Here is some Walking Dead all the way to the bank news. A judge on Wednesday handed a significant win to AMC Networks in its long-running battle over profits from The Walking Dead. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Daniel J. Buckley held that the cable network is entitled to defined, and here's an accounting term, modified adjusted gross receipts under the terms of his contract from with-profit participants. Comic creator Robert Kirkman, he's the guy who created the Walking Dead comic, filed the suit in 2017, along with producers Gail Ann Hurd, Glenn Mazzara, and David Alpert. The suit accused the network of lowballing the fee to license the show from its production arm, AMC Studios. The suit followed a similar claim from the show's creator, Frank Darabont, who is currently seeking a $300 million settlement or ruling in unpaid profits in a suit in New York. That case was first filed in 2013, and it's set to go to trial sometime next year. Jesus, that's almost 10 years. 8 years. It's exactly 8 years. That's a long time to wait for your money. In the Los Angeles case, Buckley held a mini trial in February and March to focus on the question of the appropriate modified adjusted gross receipts definition. And that is, folks, what that is the way they count up the money and take out expenses and all that. It's one way of calculating the bottom line, and that's the number that they use to decide how much your residuals are going to be, how much your royalties are going to be. You get a percentage of that number. So if AMC says that number is smaller than you think it is, you get less money. So AMC contends that it had been making the correct profit participation payments under its standard definition, and it argued that the plaintiffs were urging the judge to rewrite the deal after the fact. In a 59-page ruling on Wednesday, Buckley ruled that AMC's position is correct. Quote, all the relative contractual provisions are unambiguous and demonstrate that AMC's MAGR, which is the modified adjusted gross receipts definition, is binding, the judge wrote. AMC's lead attorney, Oren Schneider, hailed the ruling in a statement. Here's a quote. Today's decision is a total victory for AMC, he said. The judge found in AMC's favor on all 7 issues that were presented on trial, and confirmed that AMC honored its contract and paid Mr. Kirkman and the other plaintiffs what they were owed. The court found these plaintiffs had the most sophisticated lawyers and agents in Hollywood, and they got what they bargained for. We are now turning our attention to the trial in New York, which involves very similar claims by CAA and Frank Darabont. Secure in the knowledge that the first court to hold a trial on these issues ruled completely in AMC's favor, end quote. The Los Angeles case will now go to trial on the remaining issues unless the parties can resolve their dispute out of court. Okay, why did I bring this up? Well, obviously because it has to do with a TV show. But folks, this is what happens when you negotiate a contract based on your expectations rather than what actually happens. And what do I mean by that? I would imagine that when Kirkman and the rest of these people negotiated this contract with AMC for The Walking Dead, and here's the other thing. I'm sure they're making a ton of money, but they could not have imagined that The Walking Dead would ultimately be, at one point, the #1 show on television. Even saying that, even though I lived through that and saw it happening, I never watched The Walking Dead, by the way, but I know it was very popular. I can't believe it even coming out of my mouth today. So I'm sure they were quite satisfied with whatever it was they negotiated the first time. Some of them might have been just happy that AMC even accepted the pitch to go on the air. So now when they see all this huge money that's being made, because when you got the #1 show on television, you can charge advertisers astronomical rates. So AMC, I am sure, is quite satisfied with their return on their investment. And I am not one to necessarily back management all the time. And I don't want to sound like I'm in the, like saying, yay for corporate America. I will say this, though, as somebody who, most of my career, I don't make money doing what I'm doing right now. I make money in real estate, which involves a lot of contracts. And so I believe in honoring the contract you sign, not based off the results. So in other words, if I sell a house for X amount of dollars and the seller is quite happy with the price that we were able to negotiate for the house, but later on they discover the house is sitting on an oil field and they're not as happy anymore, I'm sorry that we have a contract. We're under contract with the buyer now. There are ways you can get out of contracts, but most of the time they're binding if you write them correctly. And so you can't say, oh, now you're making this much more money on The Walking Dead than we expected to make, so therefore we need to renegotiate this contract. And obviously the judge felt the same way. So these are things that happen on the business side of television. I thought I'd bring it up because I thought it was quite interesting, especially with that property, The Walking Dead, because in my world, whatever they got for The Walking Dead is a windfall. All right. I can understand the graphic novel, but my God, zombies. I didn't think a zombie series would be able to last this long, let alone be successful. So, I know everyone wants more money, but I would imagine that Kirkman and Frank Darabont and all those people associated with The Walking Dead are doing quite well. Next, Perry Mason, the series that I was going to recap at one time on this show. Well, they got some pretty good news. I'll tell you about that. And I got some Hulu news for you too. So stick around, go get some refreshments. We're going to pay some bills. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. All right, we are back. You all right, Jack? I know that was a lot of legal stuff in that last segment. And this might be a little legal stuff too. Not quite as serious, not so much in the weeds. Perry Mason. Nice series. I like the old Perry Mason. Well, the new Perry Mason has been picked up for a second season by HBO. News of the renewal was announced by Frank Orsi. He's executive vice president of HBO programming, and it comes only 5 episodes into the series' season debut. Now, this version of Perry Mason centers around a low-rent private investigator, played by Matthew Reeves, in a pretty cool leather jacket, may I add. He lives check to check, and he's haunted by his wartime experiences in France. And he was in World War I, and they have some pretty cool flashback scenes to that. And he's suffering the effects of a broken marriage. The show also stars John Lithgow as Elias Burchard Jonathan, known as EB. He's a struggling attorney and a semi-regular employer of Mason. Juliette Rylance, who does a great job, quite attractive too, as Della Street. She's Johnson's creative and driven legal secretary, much like she is Raymond Burr's legal secretary in the TV series of old. Tatiana Maslany as Sister Alice McKeegan, the leader of the Radiant Assembly of God. And Shea Wiggum as Pete Strickland. He's hired by Mason as a sidekick at times. He's an extra set of eyes on his various investigations. Here's a quote. "It's been an exciting journey to work with the immensely talented team behind Perry Mason," said Orsi. "Viewers have relished being transported back in time to the 1930s Los Angeles each week, and we are thrilled to welcome the show back for a second season." Now, end quote. This is what I'll say about that. They do a fantastic job on that show. As I said, when it was premiering, I did a little segment on, I mentioned it on this podcast, the visuals and the period pieces and all of that, fantastic, stunning. The storytelling needs to be worked on. It does. Not to be a spoiler, so I won't spoil it, but a particular character who had gotten a lot of screen time at one time died in the last episode, and it really didn't matter. It did have an effect on the plot, but, it was, for all intents and purposes, a seemingly important character that suddenly was gone after 4 episodes, which should have, I think, had a deeper impact if the story was being told very well, but it wasn't, I don't think. So I think they can work on that, but it's a very well-made show. The series debuted to strong ratings numbers a month ago, drawing 1.7 million viewers for its premiere across platforms. Now, to give some larger perspective, as far as HBO is concerned, that matches the season 3 premiere of Westworld, and it beats the season debuts of Watchmen, which drew 1.5 million viewers, and The Outsider, which Stephen King novel, which delivered 1.2 million viewers. I think HBO was a little bit disappointed with the viewership of The Outsider, the numbers, but it did get good reviews. I watched it and thought it was pretty good. Perry Mason hails from the Robert Downey Jr. and Susan Downey's company called Downey Production Company. Very, very clever name. The husband and wife duo executive produced the series alongside Team Downey's Amanda Burrell, Ron Fitzgerald, Joe Horesek, Roland Jones, and Timothy Van Patten, who is the only person on that list who I recognize. Timothy Van Patten also directs. He's from the acting Van Patten family, but you probably know Tim Van Patten because he directed several episodes of The Sopranos. He directed some Mad Men episodes. He was a co-producer and director on Boardwalk Empire, and he actually directed the very first episode of Game of Thrones. So you could say that he is a quite accomplished director, TV director, prestige TV director. So hopefully, because they know that they have this second season to work with, they can settle in as showrunners. They can settle in and really put together a good show because they have all the ingredients, I think. They just need to make it coalesce a little better so people will want to tune in. Right now, I'm tuning in just because I have somewhat of an allegiance to HBO Productions, and I figure that if I invest in it, eventually the tide will turn. If this show were on another network, or if this show was on, I don't know, one of the streaming services, and I was binging it, I might have bailed by now. So for this viewer, they got to get it together. So we'll see what happens. They have time. Here is some breaking HC news. Hulu has optioned the rights to Curtis Sittenfeld's alternative history book, Rodham, which takes place in a world in which Hillary Rodham never married Bill Clinton. The series is described as telling the story of an ambitious young woman developing her extraordinary mind in the latter part of the 20th century, moving from idealism to cynicism and all the way back again. Sarah Treem is attached to write and executive produce the project. The Handmaid's Tale executive producer, Warren Littlefield, he's also going to be attached to Rodham via the Littlefield Company, along with Sittenfeld. Fox 21 Television Studios, where Littlefield is under an overall deal, will produce. Should the show go to series, it would be the second project focused on Hillary Clinton that Hulu has aired. The streamer debuted the 4-part docuseries Hillary back in March. Now, I didn't see that. It was nominated for a couple of things, a Peabody Award and also Critics' Choice Award. We talked about that on this show. Sounds like it was good. Haven't watched it yet. The series chronicled, that's this 4-series docuseries, chronicled her 2016 presidential campaign while also delving into events from her past that shaped her life. Rodham was originally published back in May and went on to become a New York Times bestseller. Sittenfeld's other books include You Think I'll Say It, Eligible, and Sisterland, and American Wife. Treem, that's Sarah Treem, was previously the co-creator and showrunner of Showtime's critically acclaimed series The Affair. As I mentioned, I watched all the episodes, all the series, all the seasons of The Affair, and it was up and down. I thought it started out great, went off the rails a few times, came back on the rails, and it ended up in sort of a weird place, but it was worth the watch. Her other credits include In Treatment, House of Cards, and How to Make It in America. All of which, that's not a bad resume at all. I also reported on this podcast in May, and I appropriated that scoop from goodoldvariety.com. I didn't do the investigative reporting myself. That the Gal Gadot-led series about Hedy Lamarr, which Treem will also write and executive produce, has been set up at Apple to go to straight to series. So Sarah Treem is doing it right now in the world of streaming television. Now, Ruth Wilson, who was one of the stars of The Affair and a great actress, I saw her on King Lear on Broadway. I'm a Ruth Wilson fan. Also, she's in Luther. Supposedly left The Affair because of troubles with Treem. She had accused Sarah Treem of creating a hostile work environment. And therefore she wanted to leave the series, and they violently killed her off. She was bludgeoned and drowned to death. The character Ruth Wilson played. That was a bad pink slip to get. But I have to say that Treem has continued to work steadily since that accusation. It hasn't affected her career. So I tend to believe that it might have been more of a personal thing with Wilson than anything else. I respect both of the women, so I'm sure there is some truth on both sides. I never heard what Sarah Treem had to say about the accusation. All I know is that she keeps getting jobs. So she can't be that bad, although, you can be hell on wheels as long as you're successful and you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, that's the way of the world. But I digress. I'm not sure what to think about this project Rodham. I'm not much for alternative history pieces where the lead characters are real people. I like something like stuff like The Plot Against America is different because it's about a fictional family that's surrounded by historical figures in an alternative universe. So we're talking about what if this happened? How would it affect this fictional family? I don't know if I want to see a real person, a historic figure, Hillary Rodham Clinton. What would happen to Hillary Rodham if she didn't marry Bill Clinton when actually she did marry Bill Clinton? So what are we talking about? But I guess it was a well received by readers in the bestseller. So again, what do I know? I'm just a schlub on a podcast. Here is some cookie cutter TV news. Cookie could be getting her own show. Taraji P. Henson is developing a spin-off series centered around her iconic Empire character, Lorthea Cookie Lyon, at Fox. As part of a 2-year first-look deal, she is signed with the show's producer, 20th Century Fox Television. Details on the prospective series are sparse, other than to say that it follows what is next for Cookie and that it should be ordered to pilot soon. Henson will, of course, star and produce, because if you don't produce your own stuff nowadays, you're just a bit player, in my opinion. Now, Empire co-creator and sometimes Billions cast member Danny Strong is writing the series alongside Stacey Littlejohn and Yolanda Lawrence. Lee Daniels, who's the other co-creator of Empire, will serve as a non-writing EP alongside Imagine Entertainment's Brian Grazer and Sammy Falvey. Empire ended its 6-season run earlier this year, and both Henson and Daniels have long teased that a spin-off series was always in the cards. Henson's fiery Cookie was considered by many to be the beating heart of the series, and a large reason behind its sustained popularity. Her performance as Cookie garnered her 3 Emmy nominations and a Golden Globe back in 2016. The potential furthering of Cookie's narrative comes as Henson launches her own production company called TPH Entertainment. She has tapped Christine Conley, who most recently served as vice president of TV at Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner's working title, to run the company by her side. Henson's deal with 20th Century Fox Television will see her and TPH develop projects for the studio across multiple platforms. Every sentence you're going to see from now on is going to say about production companies is going to say across multiple platforms in the predicate of it. Trust me. Here's a quote, I believe that normalizing stories around stigmatizing matters will make them more palatable for audiences to embrace. Art can change perception, and I plan to develop projects that can help further the conversation. I also aim to help cultivate and establish new young talent and their stories because they are our future and deserve a voice and a platform to be heard. I'm excited to have 20th, led by the talented Carolyn Cassidy, support me in this new endeavor, Henson said in a statement. Here's another quote. We are lucky to have a front row seat to Taraji's meteoric rise as a fixture on television through Empire. Through that relationship, everyone at the company grew to appreciate her passion for storytelling and her strong creative gut instinct, added 20th Century Fox TV president Carolyn Cassidy. With Empire finished, we look forward to helping her explore stories that need to be told through her talent and advocacy, end quote. Well, I'm very happy for Taraji P. Henson. She is a DC native, and I wish her all the luck in the world. And, you know, when Howard starts out like that, there's always a but. And he's the only but, and I'm sorry, it just is. I'm always honest with you guys. This is it. The but is this. I've never liked Cookie Lyon as a character. I like her independence. I like her smarts. And I like Taraji P. Henson playing her. 6 seasons of Cookie is enough. She is way more talented than that character, Cookie Lyons. I don't think we need any more of Cookie Lyons. We don't need any more of the Lyons family. We don't need any more of Empire, which, while I was happy to see a lot of black actors employed, I was happy that that production company was able to employ so many people on that set. I thought it was quite like Bamboozled, and I didn't particularly care for its portrayal of some elements of the black community. And I can say that a lot about Lee Daniels Productions. Lee Daniels is a very powerful man in Hollywood. You don't want to necessarily, you know, I want to be honest. I hope he respects my opinion. And while I'm happy he is very talented and I love his success, and I would never tell anyone, just like I tell you guys on the show, because I don't like Empire, never tell anyone not to watch it. And because I say those things about my opinion about Lee Daniels stuff, that's just my opinion, would ask you, in fact, I would encourage you to watch it and make your mind up for yourselves. But my 2 cents is, especially about Taraji P. Henson, is that I hope she does projects that are more representative of the black community than Empire. And I hope that she plays characters, if that's what she chooses to do. She might want to get more behind the camera. If she still chooses to act, I hope she plays a character other than Cookie Lyons, who I think some aspects of that character are quite cartoonish and demeaning. And that's all I got to say about that. Congratulations, Taraji. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about, what am I going to talk about? HBO Max, the big white in the water, in the stream, and AT&T, and how happy they are with what's going on right now. I'll be right back. Go get some refreshments. I'm going to pay some bills. Thanks for listening.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, we're back. Great White's coming, Jack. You know, I always talk about HBO Max being the Great White, and got a little article today when they reported their earnings for the last quarter, and apparently they are on target. AT&T touted the successful launch of HBO Max, with the new service helping to boost overall HBO and HBO Max subscribers by 1.7 million over the first 6 months of 2020. As of June 30th, 2020, AT&T's Warner Media reported 36.3 million total U.S. subscribers to HBO Max and HBO, up from 34.6 million at the end of last year. That's an increase of 5% over that period of time. AT&T announced the subscriber numbers as part of its second quarter 2020 earnings. Quote, "Our solid execution and focus in a challenging environment delivered significant progress in the quarter, most notably the successful launch of HBO Max. Resilient free cash flow and strengthened balance sheet," AT&T CEO John Stankey said in prepared remarks. The longtime telecom exec and former Warner Media boss, assumed the chief executive role on July 1st, taking over for Randall Stevenson. The investment in HBO Max was a drag on AT&T's Q2 earnings, reducing the adjusted earnings by about $400 million, the telecom said. In other words, they had to put out about $400 million to get HBO Max up and running, which tells you the confidence they have in what they're rolling out. $400 million, while not the lion's share by a long shot of their balance sheet, is still a significant investment. The premium HBO Max streaming service debuted on May 27th, stocked with more than 10,000 hours of TV shows, movies, and other programming. Double what's available on the legacy HBO. Warner Media's standard pricing for HBO Max is $14.99 per month, same as the standalone HBO Now, which is being phased out. The theory that the company can expand the subscriber base for HBO Max with a broader bucket of fresh originals and library titles. And I agree. Like I say on this program all the time, you gotta have original content. And while Disney came in with a bang, because they had shiny objects, they have to work on their original content or they're going to fall off. HBO Max's initial signups were helped by AT&T's various bundling and free trial offers, as well as pre-launch promotional pricing. Warner Media inked more than a dozen distribution deals for HBO Max with partners including Apple, Google, YouTube TV, Hulu, Samsung, and Comcast. But the HBO Max launch plan, which was to effectively convert the existing HBO base to HBO Max, hit a roadblock in a standoff in deals with talks with Roku and Amazon, two of the largest OTT platforms. The disputes center on subscription revenue sharing terms and ad inventory rights, as well as Warner Media's insistence that HBO Max be offered as a separate app experience, whereas Roku and Amazon want to continue reselling HBO as a channel through their content aggregate stores. Warner Media's goal is to reach 50 million to 55 million HBO Max customers in the U.S. by 2025. AT&T CEO John Stankey has told investors. Also on the roadmap are international expansion plans and the rollout of a cheaper ad-supported tier in 2021. Now, I think this is where Peacock did a good job. They thought this thing out. You can get Peacock right now free. You just get commercials on it. Now, I have a free subscription to Hulu that I got through Sprint, who is my provider for my cell phone, and it has commercials on it, which isn't that, I don't find it that irritating. They don't break too often, and even though you can't get out of watching the commercials, it's not a big price to pay to get the free service. And so I think HBO Max may want to do that quickly because I think it has helped Peacock for sure. Warner Media plans to invest $4 billion into HBO Max over the next 3 years. And I am confident that a large percentage, well over half, if not 2/3 of that, is going into original content. And that's what they need to do in order to really take over the market share. They're not going to beat Netflix anytime soon, but I think they're going to be number 2. In addition to incorporating everything on legacy HBO, HBO Max includes a slate of new originals, full seasons of Friends, The Big Bang Theory, Rick and Morty, and Pretty Little Liars. All the films from iconic animation studio Gilby, and movies from Warner Brothers, New Line, and DC. But some of the library content Warner Media used to woo customers at launch is rolling off the service. All 8 Harry Potter movies are leaving HBO Max in August after a 3-month run. At the same time, HBO Max is adding new titles, including the slate of DC Batman movies and Birds of Prey, plus they're adding Blade Runner, The Final Cut, Jojo Rabbit, and Richard Jewell. Now, I think losing the Harry Potter movies is not a bad thing. Not that I have anything against Harry Potter. I'm not a Harry Potterite, Harry Potter file. However, the thing about franchises like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, and this is the point I was making about HBOMax. About Disney Plus, is that while it's nice to have that big shiny object to get people attracted to your channel or your service, that's not going to keep them there, because most of those people have it on Blu-ray or DVD, or they've seen the movie hundreds of times. Well, that's an exaggeration, but seriously, tens of times probably. And they don't need necessarily to have that at their beck and call all the time. They probably already have it at their beck and call without whatever streaming service has it. So losing the Harry Potter movies, not a bad thing, I don't think. So now that we've talked about the Great White, let's turn our attentions to the King. Here is some Netflix breaking news. Netflix is getting in the Ryan Reynolds business again. After teaming with the A-lister on the hit Six Underground, the streaming service is buying an untitled action-adventure film that is set to star Reynolds and to be directed by Night at the Museum's Sean Levy. Netflix bought the rights from Skydance Media, which backed Six Underground, as well as the streamer's recent smash, The Old Guard, with my girl Charlize Theron. Financial terms of the sale were not disclosed. Now, I know this podcast is turning into, it seems, the pro-woman producer in Hollywood podcast. And I'm all for that, because I'm a proponent of that. Why am I bringing this up? Because Charlize Theron was one of the producers of The Old Guard. Now, this is a woman who could easily, attach herself or be included or get a job on another big budget Hollywood movie that's going to be released in theaters. But Charlize Theron, I think, is a visionary as far as being the actor, producer, woman who is guiding her own career. I mean, she has been doing it. She took the role in Monster, where she saw, first, I think she's a great actor. Okay, number one. But not everybody who has her looks would have, at that point in her career, taken that role and done what she did to herself to play that role. Now, obviously, it paid off. She won an Oscar for it, and she, did a fantastic job. But she's also gone on to do the Mad Max films, do the Atomic Blonde films. She gotten into this action movie thing. And as a woman of her, and this is just a sad reality, of her age, it has extended her career to be a leading woman. Very few, unfortunately, in Hollywood, women, once they pass, say, 40, 45, get leading roles and are the face of a movie. Only very few. You had, in the old days, it was like Bette Davis, but other than that, you had like Glenn Close, but not very many people, obviously Meryl Streep, not very many people can do that. Charlize Theron has found a niche, and not only she found the niche, she's creating a niche as a player in this, and she sees the future in streaming. That's where I'm leading to, as those of you who listen to me probably know. I like Charlize, the way she has guided her career, and I think she's already a boss. I think within the next 10 years, she's going to be like Weinstein, without the sexual assault. So I think she's good. Anyway, let me get back to this thing. Reynolds and Levy, they previously teamed up on the upcoming sci-fi action comedy, The Free Guy. Both men also produced the film. There you go. Ryan Reynolds being a player too. He did that with Deadpool. Now he's a major player too. Jonathan Tropper, this is where I leave you, that's what he did, is currently writing the latest draft of the film. The plot of the film is being kept under Kremlin-level secrecy. Tropper's rewrite is based on scripts by T.S. Nolan and Mark Levin, Jennifer Flackett. So, let me talk a little bit about Ryan Reynolds in this movie. As I previously mentioned, and those of you who pay attention to the industry, you know that Ryan Reynolds has gone from screen heartthrob, which he still is, to being a major producer because he took that shot on Deadpool and hit a grand slam. So now he is teaming with who? Netflix to make another film. And about this film, this is another action movie that 5 years ago would have definitely been a studio project to go to the big screen, to go to movie theaters. Just like The Old Guard was, just like the movie that I talked about last podcast, the Chris Evans, Ryan Gosling movie that Netflix is about to invest $200 million in. Netflix is making original content, and that's the whole point. That while I was just praising HBOMax, and I still praise them, they're doing a great job, Netflix is not waiting around and resting on their laurels. They're not going to be caught. They are investing in premium new content to put on their streaming service so they can hold their market. And they're going to do that because they have very savvy people, and they are not just resting on, they're just not banking the money. They are reinvesting in their business because they know that content drives this thing. Like I said before, just like the COVID-19 coronavirus took down the movies, or taking down the movie theaters, or actively doing that right now, Netflix just better hope that the internet stays up, running, and viable. And hopefully, and I know they are, hopefully they're on the cusp of some sort of new technology that they think is going to be the next way we're going to deliver entertainment to people, because you got to, when you're in that position, you got to stay one step ahead, or you can be taken down immediately, just like Netflix took down Blockbuster Video. This, as much as Netflix is the king right now, they can be cut down if the internet goes down. So I'm going to finish up this segment with some Walking Dead news. Robert Kirkman forthcoming Amazon animated drama, Invincible, is shaping up to be a massive reunion with the current and former stars of his AMC favorite, The Walking Dead. The series has recruited Laura Cohen, Chad Coleman, Michael Cruditz, Lenny James, Ross Marquand, and Sonequa Martin Green to join its voice cast. All 6 stars are affiliated with The Walking Dead. Cohen's casting will reunite her with her former Walking Dead on-screen husband, Stephen Ewan, who stars in the 8-episode series as a budding superhero, Mark Grayson. Cohen continues to star on Walking Dead as Maggie, alongside Marquand. Coleman previously starred as Tyrese. Kuditz played fan favorite Abraham and continues to direct episodes from time to time. James played Morgan on the flagship before moving over to the spin-off Fear the Walking Dead. And Martin Green famously played Sasha and currently stars on Star Trek Discovery. The new 6 cast members also join Carrie Payton on Invisible. Payton currently plays King Ezekiel in the flagship AMC drama. All told, there are now 8 members of the Invincible cast that creator Kirkman worked with on the zombie drama. Now, I didn't watch The Walking Dead, as I've told people here on this podcast before, but I'm really intrigued with his Invincible thing. I think Kirkman is a fantastic artist and writer. I thought The Walking Dead comic books, while again, I wasn't a reader of them, I was familiar with them when they first came on the scene, and my comic book head graphic novel buddies, who are way geekier than I am, loved it, and I respect their opinion. I'm looking forward to this animated series because I think this is really his wheelhouse. That said, obviously, The Walking Dead television show, overwhelming success by any measure. So it's not like he didn't know what he was doing at all in the television realm. That blew up. But I think this one will really, I expect it to be special. So I look forward to it. Next, we are going to be talking about problems that, these are old problems. It's Ray Fisher's beef with Joss Whedon about what happened on the Justice League set. I'm bringing this up because Justice League, the Snyder Cut, is going to show up on HBO Max. So there's a little intrigue before we get that. You all just stick with me. Go get some refreshments. I'll be back soon. We're going to pay some bills. Thank you for listening. All right. Let's wander down, Jack. Justice League news. Cyborg is pissed. We are back And here's a little, I don't know, gossip, I guess, a little controversy about the Justice League. In a live panel for the Independent Justice League Fan Convention, JusticeCon. Now, who even knew that the Justice League had a fan convention? Wow. I'd love to see those folks. On Saturday, that's when this thing happened, actor Ray Fisher claimed that he is undergoing a quote unquote, a process to get to the heart of his earlier allegations that director Joss Whedon engaged in, quote, abusive, unprofessional behavior, unquote, on the set of the 2017 DC Comics adaptation. Now, on this panel, Fisher was asked to compare working with Joss Whedon to working with Zack Snyder. Now, Zack Snyder was the original director on Justice League, and he left the film due to a family tragedy. Whedon took over directing and writing duties for extensive reshoots on the project, which opened the film. I don't know when they finished shooting, but the film opened on November of 2017, and it opened to mixed to negative reviews and to disappointing box office returns. Now, I talked about Justice League probably about a month ago on this show, and I mentioned I saw the film. I didn't see it in the theater, okay, because I saw the trailer, so I knew I wouldn't want to go see it in the theater. I saw it on cable. I didn't even do the VOD. I waited for cable to watch it free. I saw it on cable, and it sucked, in my opinion. It just was boring. That's a better way to describe it. It wasn't a bad movie. It was just a boring movie. And anybody who's familiar with the mythology, with the characters, had to be disappointed with that movie. It just wasn't worth watching. Here's a quote. I don't want to compare them, talking about Whedon and Snyder. I don't want to compare them in any way, shape, or form, Fisher said. But what I will say toward the Joss Whedon situation is obviously I put out some pretty strong words and some pretty strong comments about Joss Whedon. And every single one of those words, every single one of those comments is true, end quote. Earlier this month, Fisher tweeted that Whedon's treatment on the film's cast and crew was, quote, gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable, end quote. Now, Fisher also alleged that the producers, who were Jeff Johns and John Berg, enabled Whedon in his terrible behavior as well. Fisher once again offered no specific details or independent confirmation about his claims, but he said he did not choose to make them lightly. Here's another quote from Fisher. It's taken me 2.5 years to get all the information I need to be able to build something that's strong enough so people can't dismiss it. Now, Fisher went on to say that he spent those years approaching people to see if they would be willing to speak about their experiences on the film and if it was with anonymity and confidentiality that they did so. Here's another quote. He said, people go, yeah, I would. And so we're in the process of making sure that people can tell their stories in a confidential way, that they don't get any sort of retribution done against them. We're going to get to the heart of everything. And if anything I said about that man is untrue, I invite him wholeheartedly to sue me for libel or sue me for slander. And for those of you who aren't law clerks, libel is written defamation and slander is spoken defamation. And I think you could say that if these are untrue, that Fisher is guilty of both, but he's fairly confident he's telling the truth. I would tend to believe him if he goes as far as to say sue me. Fisher also responded to John Berg's statement to Variety that it was categorically untrue that we enabled any unprofessional behavior on the Justice League set. Here's a quote. His denial of the situation, his denial of the enabling of that situation was asinine. It was tone deaf, and it was completely disrespectful to the situation, Fisher said. That man is scared, and he should be, because we're going to get to the heart of it. And if you keep in mind that he did not deny that there was any unprofessional behavior, he did not deny knowing about any individual behavior. He said that we, meaning assuming Jeff Johns and myself, we did not enable any unprofessional behavior. You can look at that statement and tell it's a knee-jerk statement of an individual who is scared, end quote. Whedon, Berg, and a representative for Warner Brothers did not immediately respond to requests seeking comment. Whedon had no comment on Fisher's allegation when he first made them. in keeping with his overall silence on the general fan reaction to Justice League, especially demands that Warner Brothers restore Snyder's original version of the film and release the Snyder Cut. Yeah, a lot of people have been asking Joss Whedon, what do you think about that? Because of the Twitter response that we don't want your movie anymore. We want the Zack Snyder movie, but he's never said anything. In May, Snyder announced that he is currently working on an extended cut of the film, which will debut on HBOMax in 2021. That's why we're talking about this. Once again, HBOMax has made a fantastic decision to run this, to put the Snyder Cut out there. This is the main, I'll just speak personally, of everything that they've done. The opportunity to see this movie is one of the main reasons that I am going to switch over to HBOMax. I'm going to cord cut anyway, but this is the big lure for me. Fisher made clear he had no regrets about making such public allegations against one of the film industry's most successful directors. Here's his final quote. I find myself in a place where I don't have to justify the way in which I'm handling it, he said. Whatever happens to me with respect to my career or whatever it is, I could not care less, end quote. Well, I'll say this about Ray Fisher. Of everybody in Justice League, well, not that there was a ton of people, but of all the people who played roles in Justice League, of the Justice League, Ray Fisher's the dude I'd never heard of. Now, after he was announced as being Cyborg in Justice League, and, you know, they did have that little bit in Batman v Superman where you got to see a little bit of Cyborg. I couldn't really recognize him from that, but he was in True Detective, that third season. So, but by that time he was making Justice League. That's why I recognized him. But I will say this for him, of all the stars in that movie, Ray Fisher is the least established. I mean, this is probably the biggest role he's had, to my knowledge, unless I'm just totally, uninformed. And listeners to this show could probably say, yeah, Howard, you are. But I'm just thinking this is a big gamble. He must be very confident about what he's saying. And whatever happened on that set really pissed him off because, I think most stars during the course of their careers, most actors during the course of their career, probably could have some sort of complaint about directors, and they could go public about that, but they would endanger possibly their career. Nobody wants to be labeled as somebody who's difficult to work with. So we'll see how this goes. I mean, if this truly happened, I hope Joss Whedon is at least addressed. Put it this way, I don't care really what happens to Joss Whedon. I just hope Ray Fisher isn't hurt for just speaking out about it. That's all. Whatever happens to Joss Whedon or doesn't happen to Joss Whedon, I really don't care. Of course, it depends on what type of allegations, what this abuse was in the actual incidents, certainly. But if he didn't do anything unlawful, if he was just being belligerent, if he was just being an a-hole director, he didn't do anything criminal, then it is what it is. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. But I thought it was worth reporting, especially since we're about to get into the Justice League Snyder Cut, which I am anticipating. I'm looking forward to it. Here is some Walking Dead extended and delayed news. The Walking Dead was renewed for season 11 last October, ahead of the season 10 premiere. It was announced at that time that Lauren Cohen, who played Maggie Green on the post-apocalyptic drama, will return as a series regular in the new season. Furthermore, it was announced during the Fear the Walking Dead panel at the virtual Comic-Con that the 6th season of that show will debut on October 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Finally, it was announced that the new show in the franchise, and I mentioned it on this podcast before, The Walking Dead World Beyond, will debut on October 4th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, immediately after the season 10 finale of The Walking Dead. That show was also set to debut in April, but was pushed back due to the pandemic. A special episode of Talking Dead discussing both episodes will air after the series premiere. So for those Walking Dead fans, don't despair. They're coming back to your living rooms this fall in all their crudiness, and enjoy. I won't be watching. And finally, here's some breaking Witcher news. Netflix announced The Witcher: Blood Origin, a limited series in the Witcher universe, which will tell the backstory of the elven civilization before its fall and reveal the lost history of the very first Witcher. Blood Origin, to be shot in the UK, will be a 6-part live-action limited series and a prequel to Netflix's popular series The Witcher. No casting details were announced. Set in an elven world, believe me when I tell you that elven world is a phrase I didn't think I would ever say. 1,200 years before the world of The Witcher, Blood Origin will tell a story lost to time and the events that led to the pivotal conjunction of the spears when the worlds of monsters, men, and elves merged to become one, according to Netflix. Declan DeBarra, a writer on season 1 of The Witcher, will act as executive producer and showrunner. Andrzej Sapkowski, who penned the original Witcher book series, on which the Netflix show is based, will serve as creative consultant on the prequel series. Well, that's good. I mean, it's always great when you can get the writer who's a contributor and a consultant so they don't stray too much off of the original source material. So that's a very good thing. Here's a quote. As a lifelong fan of fantasy, I am beyond excited to tell the story of The Witcher: Blood Origin, said DeBarra. A question that has been burning in my mind ever since I first read the Witcher books. What was the elven world really like before the cataclysmic arrival of the humans? I've always been fascinated by the rise and fall of civilizations, how science, discovery, and culture flourish right before that fall. End quote. Okay, dude. I'm fascinated by the rise and falls of civilizations as well. So, but damn, how science, discovery, and culture flourish right before that fall. It's a fantasy book, my man. I mean, I love Game of Thrones, but I don't apply the rise and fall of civilizations of the Lannister clan to real life. Oh well. Schmidt-Hisrich, one of the showrunners, added, I am so thrilled to collaborate with Declan and the Netflix team on The Witcher: Blood Origin. It's an exciting challenge to explore and expand the Witcher universe created by Andrzej Sapkowski, and we can't wait to introduce fans to new characters and an origin story that will enrich our magical, mythical, and world even more. End quote. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's magical and mythical. It's not the rise and fall of civilizations. Sapkowski commented, it's exciting that the world of Witcher, as planned in the very beginning, is expanding. I hope it will bring more fans to the world of my books. There you go. Season 2 of The Witcher, starring Henry Cavill in the title role, has been scheduled to resume production in the UK in August. So if you watch The Witcher and you like that stuff, this is really exciting. I'm not a Witcher fan, so I'm not making fun of the elven world, okay? Because I was kind of mesmerized by Westeros. So I'm not going to have a double standard. I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that when some things are fantasy and other things are history, and you can't merge the two. And so on those words of wisdom, that's it for this episode of the GSMC Television Podcast. We're brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write me a really nice review, because it helps us, and we want to grow and bring this show to other people. Also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we will appreciate that. Please remember to email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com with any requests for the show, any feedback, anything. I read all emails on the show as long as they're clean enough to read. Listen, I know we are in some strange and challenging times right now, and we can all pull through this together. So let's just follow directions and try to do the right thing. Let's all wash our hands. Let's try not to interact with each other too intimately until we can get this thing under control. And if you go out of the house and you're going to be near people, please distance if you can and wear a mask. Have a safe and fun week. Until we meet again, please stream with care. Jack and I love you guys. Be kind to one another. Thanks for listening again. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.